Hi guys! So, we've been practicing matching information and now we're going to revise the steps that follow matching information. As you can see, we need to read the questions carefully, underlining what they are asking you to find. And you've got the 7 different types of information that they ask you to find in the sections. Then I'm going to circle the context keywords so I could know exactly in what section I need to begin reading. You would have to pay attention to any positive or negative meanings or some words that are too specific, too unique, so that it would be easier for you to find them in the text. So, for example, in question 14, we see that they are asking me to find an example. Several examples, actually. So more than one. Then I move on to the next question. So I still don't look at the text. I just analyze my statements, my questions. Then, when I finish doing that, is when I will go to the text and I will begin scanning and reading. So, question 15, they tell me to find a description. It will be a description, so describing. 16, some examples. 17 is a reference, so it would be something about specific details. Then figures. So the figures would be the numbers, and it says illustrating. So probably it will be kind of like an example or a fact. I'm just guessing in this case, but I know that it would be figures in question 18, so I would have to find numbers. Question 19, it's about a justification, just means an explanation or a fact or a reason. They're quite similar. And finally, 20, they say examples again. Then I need to continue with the keywords. Potential environmental advantages. They speak about oil palm tree cultivation. So even though I don't know what the text is about, I already focus my attention on the questions. And I already know by just looking at the keywords that it will be about palm trees and oil and environmental advantages and so on and so forth. And they're going to give me some examples about these advantages. Yeah? Examples of the advantages. Okay? Environmental advantages. So if I go back to question 15 and I focus on the context keywords, we said it will be a description. I need to find a description of a group, an organization that controls the environmental impact. 16, I would have to find some examples about the global use of this palm oil. 17, it will be a reference, so some specific details about some particular species. So it could be one animal, one group, or several animals that could actually benefit the ecosystem. Figures about the expansion of the palm oil industry, so how quickly they are expanding. And 19 would be a justification, so it would be like a fact, a reason, or an explanation. In this case, economic, so it's going to be about money, not opposing this industry. So it's a good reason in favor of the industry. Sometimes it's very nice for you to actually paraphrase these sentences with your own words so you are able to understand them better. And finally, we've got question 20, that is examples. So I need to find some examples of some creatures. It could be animals, I'm going to guess, animals or plants, something that is alive and that was affected by these plantations, by the cultivation of oil palm. Okay? So now we're going to move on to the next step. So once that I understand exactly what the questions are telling me, so I paraphrase, I identify the kind of information, I try to understand the context keywords in the simplest way possible, we'll move on to the text. So guys, when we go to the text, we need to read quickly from the beginning. That's important. And I need to try to find the context keywords in any order. Okay, and that's very important. So if I'm reading paragraph A, I'm not trying to look for the first question. I would try to look for the question that clicks to that paragraph. So the ideal thing to do is to speed reading the first paragraph, and if you can't find anything, just move on and continue with the following paragraphs. So the technique that we're using here is to read everything but fast, just trying to find any kind of keywords, context keywords. So keep reading 2 or 3 more paragraphs and try just not to go and look at the questions. Just read 2, 3 paragraphs ABC without matching anything. Don't panic. Highlight some sentences in the text without matching anything yet. So we go from the beginning, but I need to try to read not every single word. Reading fast means that I'm able to keep the main information, but not every single word. I'm not paying attention to every single word. Okay? So I just need to move my eyes fast. I'm going to do it out loud, but that's actually very bad advice, because if you read out loud when you're reading fast, you're actually going slower. So the most important thing is to read in silence, just with your eyes. Okay? Don't read every single word. Just try to read the most important keywords, okay? The most important words. But don't pay attention to prepositions or the terminus or things like that for the moment. Just the words that could give you ideas, like verbs or nouns or adjectives. So let's see. Palm oil is an edible oil derived from the fruit of the African tree, and it's currently the most consumed vegetable in the world. It's almost certainly the soap we wash with in the morning, the sandwich we have for lunch, the biscuits we snack on during the day. Why is palm oil so attractive for manufacturers? Primarily because its unique properties, remaining at room temperature, make it an ideal ingredient for long-term preservation, packaged food, supermarket shelves, best before dates of months, even years into the future. For the moment, it doesn't ring a bell. And as you could see, I'm not even pronouncing words. I'm just reading fast in my head. So let's continue and see more information about this. Many farmers have said the opportunity to maximize the planting of olive trees between when all palm trees grew from accounting 10%. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of numbers now. 50 years ago, 60 million tons every year. A figure, and that's very important actually, looking likely to double or even triple the middle of the century. So 6 to 17 million hectares. Then 10% of total, then 2 million tons of palm oil, and then around 60 million tons produced. So definitely this is something that I remember, and if I go back to the questions, I know that the question is 18, because they talk about figures, and everything that I can see in that paragraph is numbers. If I check with the keywords and they say rapid expansion of the industry, we can see that in paragraph B, right? Because they say maximize the planting of oil palm trees, so to expand, yes. Also, they're speaking about the global land area devoted to growing these trees, and the number grew from 6 to 17, yes. Then they're speaking about 10% of total cropland in the entire world. Again, they're speaking about the expansion of that industry. 2 million tons of palm oil being produced annually, and so there are now around 60 million tons produced every single year. So that means like this figure is doubling or tripling by the middle of the century. As we can see, it fits. In this case, I was matching paragraph B because I remembered that one of the questions was about figures and numbers, and I could remember that, and that's why I matched it. If I couldn't remember it, if I couldn't remember the questions, is because I didn't do my job properly at the beginning about understanding in a very simple way what the questions were asking me. And if I don't remember, just keep going to the third paragraph, and then it's when you can actually have a good look at the questions again and try to match the previous paragraphs. So let's continue with C. Read fast. However, there are multiple reasons why conversations palm oil. Okay, so rapid spread of palm plantations. Countless new stories of deforestation, habitat destruction, dwindling species and populations, clearing to establish monoculture in Malaysia, Indonesia, endangered species, so something about species, most famously is the orangutan, rhinos, elephants, tigers, other fauna. Okay, so they're actually giving me endangered species. So that I remember was a context keyword from one of the questions. Now, from what I can see, they're giving me examples of names of these endangered species. The orangutan, rhinos, elephants, tigers, and other fauna. And then I also see have suffered from the unstoppable spread of oil palm plantations. So I read that bit, okay, so I go very quickly, as you can see, not even pronouncing correctly, because it shouldn't be, it should all be in my head, okay, right at the beginning, until I see any of the context keywords that I underlined. And when I see any of these keywords, then is when I stop and I read everything very, very carefully. Try to understand exactly what they're telling me, if it is an example, a description, a comparison, all right? So if I go back to the questions and I try to find this species, I have 17 that says particular species and 20 that is creatures. But only one of them is giving me or is asking me for examples. And that's number 20. Example. 17 is reference. So they're speaking about specific details about it. And actually 17, it says benefit the ecosystem. It's a positive thing. Whereas 20, it says affected, badly affected, yeah, if I read that correctly. And that's negative. So I know that this last part of the paragraph is actually answering question 20 because it's about the establishment of the plantations. So they have suffered from the spread of the plantations. Okay, so without any hesitation, we'll continue with the following paragraph. And as you can see, I'm not answering the questions in order. My paragraphs, I'm reading them one after the other, but my questions, I'm answering them as they come. So let's read fast paragraph D. Palm oil, sorely one of the greatest threats to global biodiversity. University is replacing rainforests. Rainforest is where all the species are. That's a problem. Okay, again, we are quite negative. This is like some really good questions about environmentalists, such as whether consumers should try to boycott palm oil entirely. Okay, quite a negative paragraph. Let's continue reading it. Meanwhile, studies. So as you can see, I'm actually skipping all the names. I'm not even paying attention to reading the names properly. Names at this moment, at this point, they're not really important. So I just skip them. It's very easy to say palm oil is the enemy. We should be against it. It makes for a more dramatic story, it's very intuitive. Given the complexity of the argument, I think a much more nuanced story is closer to the truth. Okay, so quite a negative paragraph for the moment. I've underlined I've highlighted any important sentences that kind of summarize the main idea of this paragraph, but I don't actually have any context keyword in mind. So I'm going to keep having a look, see if I can match it with anything. So we've got advantages, so that's positive. Then I have something about this organization, but they don't say anything about organization. It's about the global use. They don't really say the use about around the world. To benefit the ecosystem, again, that's another very positive point. The one about numbers, we did it. The one about the animals affected, we did it. Sometimes you have to read the paragraph more slowly to see if it clearly means what you're looking for. Okay, that's the important bit. But in this case, I couldn't find anything. Also, you need to bear in mind that sometimes one paragraph could answer more than one question. They will tell you in the instructions, okay, if you can use one letter or more than once or not, okay? So in this case, if I pay attention to my exercise, I cannot repeat any of the letters because they don't mention that I could use the letters more than once, and they usually do it at the top of the exercise. So in this case, I cannot use the letters more than once. So I keep reading fast the next paragraph and see what clicks. One response to the boycott movement has been the argument for the vital role palm oil plays. So that's an important sentence of the main idea of this paragraph. And then libers in developing poverty. Is it decided to have boycott, replace, eliminate its chain? How many low-income people in developing countries depend on it for their livelihood, so for their life? How best to strike the territorial balance between competing factors has become a serious bone of contention. So if I have a look at the question, they are saying justification that is an economic point of view in order to be in favor of this industry. And basically they're saying the vital role of palm oil, and that is that low income people, so poor people, depend on these plantations, on this industry. So it is question 19. Okay, let's keep reading. Even in deforestation having a straightforward as it seems, oil palm plantations produce at least 4, potentially up to 10 times more oil than bean. Immensely high yield, which is potentially what makes it so profitable, is potentially also an ecological benefit. If 10 times more palm oil can be produced from a patch of land than any competing oil, then 10 times more land would need to be cleared in order to produce the same volume of... Okay, let's continue. It looks good, right? Because we have this... there's oil palm plantations that produce more than any other vegetable, and that is very profitable. So we're speaking about money and also an ecological benefit. So we're speaking about the environment now and not just about money. So let's keep going and see what else they say. As for the question of carbon emissions, so again, environment. The issue really depends on what palm oil trees are replacing. Crops vary in the degree to which cement was one of carbon they capture from the atmosphere. The more carbon reduces the effect of climate change. Palm monoxide is always in some ways than others. You're cutting down virgin forests is terrible. That's what's happening in Indonesia and Malaysia. It's been getting out of hand. For example, I actually sequester more carbon. Okay, so definitely speaking about environment, if I go back to the questions, could I say anything about the ecosystem? So I have some examples of potential environment advantages. When we are cultivating the palm tree. And as we highlighted, one of the potential advantages is the reduction of carbon emissions. Let's continue then reading the next paragraph. The industry is not regulated. So the industry is regulated by a group called the Round Table Sustainable Palm Oil. And then interested interesting parties, agreement reached regarding standards consists 12 million tons of palm oil annually, equivalent to 25%. So it's the whole thing, right? The whole paragraph is speaking about this group. They're giving me a lot of information about this group. So that means is describing the organization that controls it. And therefore is question 15. Let's continue then. Finally, the receiving home with palm plantation events such as terramar cultures, green desserts, hence at one plant, which might make all the difference. The bird's nest fern is dependent for support on nutrients. Native to many tropical fishes. It's a vital ecological role, introducing into all palm plantations could potentially allow these areas to recover their biodiversity and then providing a home for all manner of species, from fungi to bacteria to invertebrates such as insects. So that's very interesting because they're now giving me a particular species, which is the plant, the bird's nest fern, yeah, and that would be question 17, which could actually benefit from the plantations. So the possible benefits for the plant, as they say, is that these areas could recover the biodiversity. So that's one of the benefits for the ecosystem. Biodiversity means the same as ecosystem. And they're giving me the reference, so this detail specifically about that plant. So that's why it would be number 17. So now I do have paragraph D and A that I haven't matched with anything. D is all about negative things. So we spoke about destroying, that it was a problem, that it's a threat. And then A, if I read that slowly again, So if we go to step number 4, as I said, sometimes you will have to read the paragraph more slowly to see if it clearly means what you're looking for. So because now I have just DNA to match, and is the only one that I have left, I would have to read them slowly. So D, I remember already, that is quite negative. And the matching that I have to do is not negative at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the decision of just reading A very slowly and see if I can still match it with the question that I have last. So let's read paragraph A very, very slowly. Palm oil is an edible oil derived from the fruit of the African oil palm tree and is currently the most consumed vegetables in the world. It's almost certainly in the soap we wash with in the morning, the sandwich that we have for lunch, the biscuits we snack on during the day. So if I go back to the questions and I just have question 16 left, examples of the global use of this oil, I can clearly see that A is giving me several examples, right? So we are using it in the soap to wash. We are also using it for lunch. We are also using it for snacking. Yeah? So that's what A is about. And therefore, my decision would be that paragraph A is actually giving me examples of the use that I need to find for question 16. So guys, as you can see, that's basically it. The main focus, as we said, is based on the ideas, and I really need to understand what ideas are those in the questions. Use simple language for you, easy to understand and remember what you're reading. And then when you go to the reading text, just don't panic. Read quickly until you find some keywords. If you don't, just keep going. And then, as I did, you will always have some paragraphs left that you can read more slowly to actually then figure out which one is the right match. And as you can see, for many of the paragraphs that I was matching, I couldn't find the exact words. For example, in paragraph A, I couldn't see the exact words of global use or widespread. We don't have any of those keywords in paragraph A. But as I have to find examples, that's the most important bit. So that's the decision that I have to make, to actually understand that I'm looking for examples and I'm not looking for words or vocabulary. I truly hope that by watching me do the activity, you are able to follow my steps. I will do another paper-based, okay? I wanted you to see how to do it on computer-based. So as you can see, I can definitely still highlight and underline and write some numbers on the computer-based test. But also I will do some practice paper-based so you can see how the same techniques are applied. Okay, so that's all for me. I hope that this was useful and see you soon. Bye!